Hi everyone. We're going to talk about a topic that comes up on my lesson tee daily, and that's how to hit the driver farther. I'm going to talk about some variables that you need to consider, a setup that's going to help us drive it as far as we possibly can, and then a few drills that'll definitely help you to drive it farther. But before we get to that, when this video's over, please like, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and comment. Okay, so the first thing we need to talk about is something that gets overlooked by most golfers, and that's centeredness of contact. And I'm going to talk about where we should hit the ball on the club face to maximize launch, spin, and ultimately distance. Now, something to understand is when I miss the center of the club face, the club at impact will actually twist. So if I hit it towards the toe, the face is actually going to open, and when I hit it towards the heel, the face is actually going to close. And when that closing or opening happens, it actually cushions the blow so the ball does not come off the club face as fast as it can. Now, I think everybody's learned by now one of my favorite training aids at my golf school is Dr. Scholl's foot spray. So if you get some, and there's a link below, and you spray the face, that's the first thing that you want to pay attention to, is where am I catching it on the face? And I can tell you for distance, the worst place we can hit it is in the heel. So I regularly see people who hit it in the heel, and it's anywhere from 30, 40, 50 yards of difference versus when they hit it in the center of the club face. Now, another thing we need to pay attention to is how high or low am I hitting it in the club face. If I hit it too high and I only see kind of an imprint of half the golf ball, that'll definitely take some ball speed away. Or if I'm hitting it too low in the club face, again, the club's just not really designed to be hit there. So that center face contact is the first thing that we want to look for when our goal is to hit the driver farther. Okay, so before we get into the setup that's going to help us hit the driver further, I talked a lot about where we don't want to hit the ball in the club face, but we never talked about where we should hit it. So let's go over that real quickly. So you can see I have my Dr. Scholl's on my face here. The optimal place for distance that we want to see you strike the club face is just a little north of center in the middle of the club face. So when we talk about that being a little high in the club face, tee height definitely becomes a consideration. So let's get into the setup, and we'll start with that. We'll start with, I get the question probably every golf school that comes here is, how high should I tee the driver? And I'll show you what I like to see. I like to see about 3/4, half to 3/4 of the ball above the top line of the driver. The top line of the driver would be the crown or the top side here. Now, there's always an asterisk in golf. That's pretty high on the tee. If you're somebody who hits down on the driver, so they tend to, as the club's coming into impact, it's moving down with the driver. If I have it teed nice and high on the tee, but I'm hitting down with the driver, the ball is actually going to hit in the top or above where we want to hit it and hit the crown, and when that happens, we get pop-ups. So if you're somebody who hits down on the driver, and you'll know if you're somebody who hits down on the driver because you'll like it low on the tee versus high on the tee, then I would continue to do that until you can make these setup adjustments that we're going to talk about that are going to help you to hit up on the driver. So I think you can kind of understand by now that it is beneficial for us to hit up on the driver. And we know when the ball's on the ground, we got to hit down, we got to get contact with the turf. That's what helps get it up into the air. But with the driver, it's different. And people look at me and say, okay, so the iron swing and the driver swing are different? Yeah, sort of. It's the same swing, but there's going to be some nuances to it that are a little bit different. So everything we do in our setup helps us to hit up on the golf ball. And there's debates out there whether you should hit up or down on the ball when it comes to the driver. And all I know for certain is I have a TrackMan chart I'm going to share here with you. There is a benefit as far as carry and total distance to hitting up on the ball versus hitting down. Now, the average on tour, the average tour player is hitting about 1.3 degrees down on the ball, but you got to remember that they swing the club, 113, their club head speed is 113 plus. I would say the average club head speed I see on my lesson tee in Naples is 80 to 85 miles an hour. So at that speed, there's definitely a benefit to hitting up on the golf ball. So let's get into this setup. What's going to help us to do that? So we already talked about tee height. I like to see it higher versus lower, unless you're somebody who hits down on it. Then you got to keep it low until you make some of these adjustments we're about to talk about, I should say. The next thing I want to see is I want to see the ball forward in your stance. So what I do with people is I start everybody up off their right toe, which may be too forward for some people because everybody's pattern's a little bit different, but I think it's a good baseline, it's a good starting point. And what happens is I have some students who actually like it a little further back. I actually have some students who even like it a little more forward than that. But it's a great starting point. You're going to have your Dr. Scholl's on your face, and so you'll start to see where you're hitting it on the face with it in this forward position. So I'm going to get the ball up off my right foot, and because the club is only so long and my arms are only so long, at some point that club's going to start working back up into the air, and that's a good thing because we know we need to hit up on the driver. So having the ball forward helps us to hit up on the driver. Now, one other thing that helps us to launch it into the air and really hit up on it is how we set up at address. And what I like to see is just a little bit of tilt away from the target. And the easiest way I've found to get students to do this is just as I'm doing here. Go ahead and put your club across your chest, and I want you to point the end of your club or your shoulders as high as you want the golf ball to go. Now notice I'm not leaning into my left side. I'm just creating a little bit of tilt. And the other way we can create this tilt is I can just take my right hip, your left hip, just imagine you're looking in a mirror here, and just push it to the target. And you see how that creates the tilt that I'm looking for. So again, ball forward, I'm going to tee it high because I want to hit up on it. I'm going to get it more forward in my stance, up off my right toe, be your left toe if you're a right-handed golfer. And then I'm just going to point the club or my shoulders high enough that I can launch it up into the air. Now, one thing that I do see, and I want you to be aware of this, is I see people who get set up with their driver in a really strong position. So they've got the tee height really, really good. They've got the ball forward where it should be. And they create the tilt properly. They got their shoulders aiming as high as they want the ball to go. But by the time they get to impact, they're in front of the golf ball. And what happens is I'm now going to be hitting down on the driver, and guess what? I'm going to hit it with it teed that high. I'm going to hit it in the crown of the driver. The ball's going to pop up into the air. So something that we see with tour players, really good players, is they start with that tilt, but believe it or not, by the time they get to impact, they increase that tilt, or their head and their spine stay back, or they increase that. And again, that's what helps them to hit up on it and drive it or launch it high into the air. So those are a few setup things that if you make these adjustments will definitely help you to hit the driver farther. Okay, so we know centeredness of contact is very important, and we just learned a great setup to create as much speed as we can and to hit the driver as far as we can. Now, I want to give you a couple drills. So you're hitting it in the center of the club face, you got a nice strong setup, but you're still not seeing the distance that you want. What are some things that you can do? And I said I was going to give you one. I'm actually going to give you two. And the first one is more of a mental strategy. I coach students up by doing this, and I'll have my TrackMan sitting on the ground behind them, and I'll see if I can get any difference by verbally coaching them up versus physically doing something different. And so the way that I'll verbally coach them up is I'll say, all right, we're playing in a scramble. I've just hit it as straight and as far and as long as I can possibly hit it. Your job is, it's either all or nothing. I don't care where, just hit it further. And a lot of times I'll see club head speed go up, and I call it hit it like you mean it. A lot of people will tend to use their cruising speed, and with the driver, it's a distance club. We want to hit it far, so we want to have that hit it like you mean it mentality. And one thing I talk about is I don't want my students out of control, but I think you should be towing the line of out of control to hit it far and to play good golf. And at that point I know that the swing is freed up and we're doing everything we can to get as much distance as we possibly can. So that's one way. Hit it like you mean it. You're in a scramble, you're playing, you're the last person to hit, and all you can do is hit it a little further. I want that intention. I want that amped up swing. And the thing about that is it's not a swing you have to use on every hole. You have your cruising speed that if you get on a tight par 4 or a tight par 5 that gets you in the fairway, but now you get on a wide open hole like here at Naples Grand number 6, long hole, very wide open. You know, now we can reach back and go ahead and give it a little more. So again, sometimes I see club head speed increase with that, sometimes I don't. So another way I'll get the club head speed up is I will ask them to create as loud a swoosh as they can at the bottom of the golf swing, but I want it to be as far in front of the golf ball as you can make it. I don't want the speed back here, I don't want the speed up here, I don't want the speed right at the ball, I want it in front. So if the most of my speed is here, think about how fast that club was going back here. So again, I'm going to make swings, trying to create as loud a swoosh as I can, as far in front of the golf ball as I can. And then again, I'm going to get in and I'm going to hit some golf balls. Now I have my students do something I call overspeed training. So in the middle of their practice session, not at the end when you're tired, not at the beginning when you're not loose, but in the middle of your practice session, just pick a number of balls, hey, 10, 12, 20. And I want you to hit it with that loud intention with no regard for where the ball goes. I don't care if it goes left, right, 1 foot, or 400 yards. You're just going to practice at that higher intention. So right now your speed is here. We practice at this speed and we just keep leapfrogging until we see that speed increase. So one other way that I like to see you use this swoosh drill and getting the noise as loud as you can in front of the golf ball is to not only do it with your dominant hand, which for me is left-handed, so doing it left-handed, I can create a lot of speed, a lot of noise in front of the golf ball, but it's also turning around and doing it right-handed. So I've tested a lot of players, and when I can see their non-dominant side get as fast or as loud as their dominant side, I see the club head speed go up, and I see them drive the ball further. So I think you now know how important it is to hit the center of the club face when we talk about distance with the driver. You also now have a very solid way to set up to maximize your distance with the driver. And then you've got a very effective drill, either using the mental strategy of hit it like you mean it, or I'm going to work really hard on getting that speed as far in front of the golf ball as I possibly can. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and there are 2 more available right here that I promise will continue to help you improve your game. Remember, please like, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and comment.